In this video, I'm going to be going over Jubilee. Her hero deck just came out, and I wanted to help people out with tweaking the Precon deck so that it can be a little more functional for them to play. Before that, though, if you can take a second to like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that a lot. I'm getting really close to 500, and I'm really excited to meet that goal. First, I'm going to cover Jubilee's key cards, and then go over her Precon deck as well. And then I'm going to go over how to adjust the Precon deck using cards just from the core box, just in case you have a limited card pool, and then how to adjust it a little further if you have a wider card pool, and then finally go over a deck made by Roly Poly, which is Paulina, who does a lot of the streams with me. We'll go over that deck at the end as well. So jumping into her key cards, she comes with three resource cards called Plasmoid Energy. They're double resources, notably with different types. So there's a mental and an energy and a resource, physical, and then a mental and a physical. So it has all three of the combinations that you can have with those three types of resources, which will come up later when you see the rest of her kit. And then Jubilee's coat here says after you play a thwart event, exhaust Jubilee's coat, choose a scheme, remove one threat from that scheme for each different resource type used to pay for that event. And the sunglasses is very similar. You get +1 attack, and then you exhaust Jubilee's sunglasses after playing an attack event, and then deal 1 damage to that enemy for each different resource type used to pay for that. So now all of a sudden her Plasmoid Energy card makes a lot of sense because you want to be trying to play her events with as many different resources as possible. Because of that, the double resources, which I normally recommend to go into every deck you make, I do not recommend here because the power in all of us is going to be better. Being able to use 2 physicals of the same type, or 2 mentals of the same type, or 2 energy resources that are the same type is not actually that beneficial for Jubilee. And the power of cards that have a wild, the doubles, to where you can get 2 different kinds of resources is going to be much more effective for her than the standard double resources. So this is the Precon deck she shipped with. Husk is an interesting ally, 4 cost. When Husk uses a basic power, spend up to 3 resources. If you spent at least 1 energy, you get +1 to that power for this use. Mental, you get to heal 1 damage from Husk. Physical, you get to ready Husk. So that gives Husk a lot of different uses, and it synergizes well with Jubilee's cards. Chamber is another 4-cost ally. Chamber takes -1 consequential damage after he attacks a confused enemy, and Jubilee's cards come with a lot of different ways to confused, and it adds into that confused build. Sync is an ally that I'm really excited about. It says play only if you have the X-Men trait, and when you use a basic power, exhaust sync, you get +1 to that power for that use. So you don't have to deal consequential to sync for that, so it can lean into your basic activations. We'll go over this a bit more later, but unfortunately this card I don't think works all that well for Jubilee. But it's going to be really, really good in other X-Men decks. Then it comes with 2 Power of Justices, which is good. 3 copies of X-Gene, so in case you didn't have X-Gene yet, it'll be useful to have 3 of these. It's limited to max 1 per player, and it says generate a wild resource for an identity-specific event, but you can only play this card if you have the mutant trait, meaning if you're in hero form and you're an X-Men, not a mutant, then you don't get to actually play this card. So you have to play it in alter ego form, and then it only works for your identity-specific events. Generation X is a new player-side game. It has 3 per player, and it costs 0. Each X-Men character gets +1 thwart while making a basic thwart against this scheme. So any X-Men character, including allies that have 2 thwart, can finish this, their share of it. So in 1 player, that's enough to finish it, and then in higher player counts, you need a couple more. But it's a very easy event to finish, and then when you finish it, you get to add an identity-specific event to your hand. And then Disguise says you can exhaust, disguise, and your identity, remove 2 threat from a scheme. This is interesting. It works well with her shopping spree side scheme, which we'll go over a little bit later. But this also isn't really for her. This is going to be a lot better for characters that don't have a lot of thwarting in their kit. So like Hulk comes to mind. Hulk can use this and then basically has 2 thwart for the rest of the game. So that can be cool. And notably, it also works in Alter Ego. So you can stay in Alter Ego, exhaust your identity, and then remove threat that way as well. 3 Steps Ahead is a really fun Jubilee card. Not her specific card, but it's really fun for her. It's a hero action thwart for each different resource type used to pay. Choose a scheme and remove 2 threat from it. So notice it says energy, mental, physical, and wild. Wild resources don't have to change to a physical, mental, or energy. They can stay wild. So that could come up here, depending. That was a new rule I learned actually when I saw this card. Multi-talented is a very, very cool card here. So it's a basic event, and it has 3 cost, and it's attack / thwart. If you paid for this using at least 1 physical, deal 2 to an enemy. Mental, remove 2 threat from a scheme. Or energy, heal 2 damage from your identity. So Jubilee is going to be able to pay with 3 different kinds of resources very easily between the plasmoid energies and exhausting to generate a wild resource on her hero side. So this is a super fun card. And then since it's attack and thwart, it also combos well with the coat and the sunglasses. So this card is amazing for Jubilee, but I'm also planning on using this in not just Jubilee decks. Because it's not all that hard for different characters to get 3 different resource types. And the healing on it's really nice. Healing in hero form is very good. Waylay is a new Justice attack event that I'm really excited about. So it's after your hero thwarts. That includes your basic thwarts and your events that are thwarts. You get to deal 4 damage to an enemy. And if you remove all of the threat from the scheme, you get to deal 7 instead. So especially in solo, this is going to add a lot of damage to those Justice control builds. And I'm excited to build around that. Cell phone is an item. Works with the shopping spree. Exhaust cell phone. Remove 1 charge counter from here and choose a player. That player makes a basic attack or thwart with a character they control, and that character gets +1 thwart and +1 attack for this use. And then a team up card. Unlikely duo. Team up Jubilee and Wolverine, max 1 per deck. Hero action, confuse an enemy, deal 4 damage to a confused enemy. Now that we've gone over all the cards for the Precon deck, we can go over the changes we're going to make. Starting with what cards to cut. So you'll notice that Disguise and X-Gene are max 1 per player, but in the Precon decks, they come with 3 copies of that. That is because they want you to have a full card pool, but in general, when you see Precon decks like this, I would recommend just dropping it down to 1. It's a lot simpler. You're not going to have those dead cards in your hand later when it comes up. Disguise, there is an argument to keep more of it because you can finish your shopping spree on the first turn if you get Disguise in your first hand. But I'm not sure that I don't think that's actually worth it. And then X-Gene, probably definitely cut down to 1. I mean, you could also keep 3 if you just want the more wild resources, but I don't think Jubilee needs help with wild resources, so you can drop that down to 1. And then cell phone is a great because it's an item, but again, it's leaning into basic activations, which isn't really Jubilee's thing. Often Jubilee is going to be using her hero ability to generate that wild resource. So I'd recommend cutting this down from 3 to 1. You could cut it entirely, but I just thought that because it's a cell phone and it feels thematic and it's an item, I just leave a copy in here. And then sync, for the same reason that cell phone isn't great, I cut sync because, yeah, you just don't really need to lean into your basic activations. Notably, sync works with recovering, so you could recover for more. So Jubilee has 3 recovery. You could recover for 4, but you don't. I think in general there's going to be a lot better strategies, notably allies that are going to help you with staying alive. That sync is best reserved for other characters, in my opinion. And then unlikely duo, you can cut that. Wolverine is her signature ally, but when you're not playing with the heroes, these team up cards are not very reliable. It'll not line up that well to where you get Wolverine and this card in your hand, and yeah, so I'd recommend cutting that, but then adding it back in if you're playing 2-player with Wolverine on your team. So now that we cut that, we have a lot more space. This is what we have left in the deck. The allies, the Power of Justice, 1 X-Gene, 1 cell phone, the side scheme, Disguise, keeping these events because they synergize really well with the strategy. And then we have 8 open slots that we can get up to 40 cards with. You could go a little bit over 40 if you want, and there's other cards you want to add, but I'm just going to be building decks that get up to 40 with these recommendations. If you watched my deck building fundamentals video, you might remember this slide. This is just a bunch of my favorite cards to add to decks that aren't trait locked or anything. Your list of cards that you like might be different, but I would recommend just coming to either your thoughts or my list or your list if you have one of cards that you really like, and then find ones that you think might work well with Jubilee. For the Core Box edition, using Core Box only, Shopping Spree says that this threat cannot be removed from the scheme by heroes or allies, but notice that doesn't include supports. So Surveillance Team from the Core Box is going to combo very well with Shopping Spree. So Jubilee can basically hire out Shield to go buy her sunglasses and her jacket for her, because she needs to save the world, and Shield has no other option but to get Jubilee her sunglasses and jackets, so she's not upset. And then Waylay also works well with Surveillance Team because you get that giant bonus if you can thwart it down to 0, and Surveillance Team is going to allow you to control the threat levels such that you actually do get it down to 0 when you need to. And it also will save your thwarting events, so you don't need to waste thwart as much when you have Surveillance Team. And then you'll get the full benefit out of Waylay much more frequently with that. So Waylay will basically read, exhaust your identity, deal 7 damage to the enemy for this 3-cost card, which is really, really nice for Justice. Cards that I often recommend adding to like every Justice deck if you have a limited card pool would just be Avengers Mansion, Helicarrier, Nick Fury, Mockingbird, Jessica Jones, and Daredevil, but reduces the cost to play cards, which Jubilee actually doesn't want. She really, really likes her money. So you do not want to add Helicarrier, because if you go back to like Multi-Talented and her cards, if you're not using all 3 different types of resources for them, they'll be less effective on their own merits with Multi-Talented, and then also less effective with her sunglasses and her jacket. So do not add Helicarrier to this deck. Here is an example deck list that I put together. So with the core set, you'd have 10 cards from there: Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Mockingbird, Nick Fury, the 2 Power of Justices, 3 Surveillance Teams, and Avengers Mansion, which Avengers Mansion she can afford really easily because of all the money she has. And then from Jubilee's pack, you have 29 cards, which is just all her cards: Husk, Chamber, which are those nice allies, the Waylay and 3 Steps Ahead, which are cool, Multi-Talented, which works extremely well with her abilities, Generation X, and Disguise, Cell Phone, and X-Gene. This is a very, very simple way to improve Jubilee's Precon deck to be a lot more functional and strong. But if you have a larger card pool, you might want to consider some different options. So the same thing goes here. Like, we're keeping this Waylay combo that shipped in because I'm not trying to make a brand new deck. I'm just trying to improve the Precon deck. So instead of Surveillance Team, you can add Beat Cop, which is basically just upgraded Surveillance Team because it never has to go away. It doesn't use counters, so they can stay out indefinitely. And then also, when you need to, they can deal damage. They can just one-shot the minions when they come out. Jubilee's deck does have a lot of damage in it, but also just more minion control will be really nice. And then this is a combo that I like to add to a lot of the decks, is to add Under Surveillance as well. And Under Surveillance, when you increase the threat of the main scheme and you have a bunch of B-Cops out, you basically, outside of getting double advance and high boost icons, will never have to worry about the main scheme popping. And to make space for this extra Under Surveillance, I recommend cutting Cell Phone and 1 copy of 3 Steps Ahead if you're playing solo, because you'll be over-thwarting the schemes quite a bit. In multiplayer, you don't necessarily have to cut this 3 Steps Ahead because you'll be the thwarter for the table, but in solo, I'd recommend cutting at least one of them in this deck build. Nick Fury and Avengers Mansion stayed, but instead, if you have a larger card pool, I added some different options. Professor X is going to be really good because he can thwart 3 and do well with Waylay, and then confuse an enemy and let you flip down. And Jubilee is very, very squishy. She only has 9 health and doesn't really have any defense to speak of. So allies, especially ones that add extra protection, are going to be very good for her. That is also the reason I added Colossus, because Colossus is only 3 costs with a tough status card. He can block for her twice and attack for 3. That'll be really good. Snow Guard I added because Jubilee is rich. She can afford Snow Guard really easily. And then I'd likely be doing the +5 hit points and Retaliate option. So you'd have an 8 health ally with Retaliate, which is basically a second hero sitting there just to block for Jubilee. It'll be really nice. And then X-Jet is another example of a card that would be really good because, again, unlike Helicarrier, this generates wild resources. It'll combo well with your cards instead of hindering them. And then this deck list looks like that. So it's basically the same thing. Switch out the Beat Cops, or the Under Surveillances for Beat Cops. Change around your allies. X-Jet's pretty good. Snow Guard's pretty good. Again, you can add whatever cards you want to this deck list. Just add your favorites. Yeah, and then make sure you have a lot of fun. And now to go over the roly-poly deck. And this deck of hers will be linked in the description, so you can go check it out there. This is the deck list, which I'm not going to talk too much about it just because I think she did a very, very good write-up for it. Hit and Run is a card that's just basically multi-talented, which is one of Jubilee's the best cards to use for Jubilee, but slightly worse. So if you play Hit and Run and have your sunglasses and coat out, it will be 2 from Hit and Run, 2 damage from a Hit and Run, plus 3 from the sunglasses, and then 2 thwart from a Hit and Run, plus 3 from the coat, which is going to be 5/5. So 10 output for a 3-cost card, which is amazing. And yeah, again, go check out her write-up. Like and favorite her deck. This is her very first deck that she's posting. She's good at building decks, but she just never posts the decks on the Marvel card database. And when there's this giant sea of decks coming out right now with Jubilee, this one can really easily just get lost. So if you want to help her out, go like and favorite her deck, and maybe leave a comment. She likes talking about decks. Another thing to mention is that we playtested this together in 2-player against Expert Kang, and we won pretty easy. The deck worked totally good in that. I was playtesting one of my Rocket Raccoon decks that I'll probably be posting in not that long, and she was playtesting this. And yeah, an Expert Kang was not bad. Also, she playtested it in solo against Claw, this exact list, which is a multiplayer list. So there was she won pretty easy, but there was just some things that would have been better. And she talks about that in her write-up of how to adjust this deck to be for a solo if you want. So yeah, I hope this helps. I hope that this helps you just tweak Jubilee's deck a little bit more to have a lot more fun with it. And yeah, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to this video and go support Roly Poly's deck. Stay zesty, and I'll see you next time. Peace.